All right. Hey again, it's Brett Plagins from Rococo Couture. This video, I really want to show how we do a wall, how we Rococo Couture a wall, how we do a room. And we're gonna talk about where we get inspiration from, where we would start to tackle a wall, and we just want to make that nice and easy for you. All right, so let's talk about some of the walls we've done. Okay, so this wall here, bit of an entrance to this room. I actually started here, up the top. So work out how far you want to come down. You want to put some header, a bit of a keystone, and then just go either side. I already had this picture here, this particular artwork, so I just wanted to go either side of this and give it a bit of an organic aesthetic. And I wanted to see how these are like shells and they're kind of cut in magnolia. So we wanted to go with magnolia as well, just to tie it in. So once I had that panel, I then got a smaller panel. I wanted to keep the same thickness. So I wanted to use some of the same parts because obviously they're the same thickness, and I wanted them to sort of mirror each other, like a reflection in a pond. And rule of thirds, that one's going to be twice as big as the one down the bottom. But inversely, the space up the top, half the size of the space on the bottom. Again, 1 + 2 is 3. So yeah, frame and entrance. I started on this side because I had a feature to work off. That led it. Then I did the bottom part. Then I did another top part and a bottom part. Now this side you can see is narrower than this side. So I had bigger flowers, magnolia here, but on this side, I wanted a different flower. And I went with cherry blossom. Another of the great Asian flowers. And I've got a different header at the top as well. And that header I wanted to continue using. And this angel I also used, but I used it a bit differently. See how it's in the top of that door, just to mark an entryway. So I wanted to keep that as a subliminal theme to mark a bit of an entryway, a bit of an important door, because I didn't have sort of a plaster thing like I have at the top there. I didn't have a door like that. So I still wanted to mark an entryway. So that's one way you can do it. You can just work down one side and then get the other side to match. You might have to modify the other side if it's a different size. So you can see this narrow panel's missing a part that you see over here. But you wouldn't really notice too much because 98% of it's the same. Just those two pieces are missing. And that's what makes it narrower. And the top has a similar sort of aesthetic, similar sort of shape. Very similar parts, especially for the border, they're more or less the same parts. Slightly different shape because it's a slightly shorter, like narrow wall. But yeah, that's how we start. We pick one wall to start, and pick an easy wall first, just till you get really good. Okay, so next we want to do the opposite wall. We wanted to continue with the magnolias, and imagine none of the Rococo plastic tool. This cashmere leopard print, that was really the feature of that entire wall. It's the biggest object right in the middle of the wall. So what we actually did was we started, I'll show you, we started here. This is the first piece we put up. So we did that, and we did that on the other side. So you have a mirror, to keep it symmetrical. So we started here, we had this picture here, so we just had those 3 pictures. And if you watch an earlier video I put up about the background of Rococo Couture, what motivated me, you'll see this wall without the Rococo Couture. And it just had the pictures up. So I actually started here, and I went all the way down. And I wanted a bit of a pattern. So shell, different one, shell facing it. And then this is a mirror image of that. So that's the same as that, upside down. And that's, again, a mirror looking into a pond is symmetrical and sort of beautiful. And subliminally it kind of just makes sense to us. So I had this pattern here and I mirrored it. And then I did that pattern again and I mirrored it. And I kept doing that all the way down till I got to, I did both sides, till I got to the bottom here. So I was just running low. I measured that distance there, and I wanted that more or less the same size gap as on the other side of the wall, the first panel you saw me do. So I had to find a way to sort of end the pattern and tie it into the wall. So this part here was the corner part on that first panel and the second panel that we did on the other wall to tie them in. But that distance there is also equal. So anyway, we went down here, we finished here. We put this panel here, part here, because we had to go both sides, that way and that way. So two of those panels, picked a piece in the middle, for a middle piece, sort of nice little box there. It's just a bit of creativity, but you just had to find a way to finish that direction and head in a different direction. And you want to head in two directions, that way and that way. So we wanted to pick pieces that would allow us to do that. And then once we reached this way, we had that other picture up there, and we wanted to have another downward part here, and we wanted them to join. So the easiest way to do that was start where we ended and then work your way this way over here. And now, as long as that distance to the floor is the same, we could work our way up with the exact same pattern. So we had that pattern there and we crossed it up the top. We found a sequence that would fit that gap. And then we had to sort of put this one in here. We just had to pick another sequence. Sometimes you end up with a gap and you just got to find something that would fill the gap. And sometimes having little spaces, not having it butting up to each other, does work. So that's basically what we did to get that box, and we copied it both sides. So once we had that, we had to join them up on the bottom. So again, you start on one side, and whatever you do on this side, you do on the other side, and you keep it symmetrical. So you just keep going until you get to the middle, and you can see when we got to the middle, we had basically this space left. So you just have to work out how to join the two. So you might want to just play around with that and check with your measure tape. Just try and get something that would fit exactly. And you always find something to fit, cause that's why that's on an angle. But it works. As long as you do it both sides, it'll work. So you have the bottom, you have the frame, and then you just have to work out the top. So I was working around this. I had that, and I thought, okay, let's go around it, both sides. I went this way first, and I'll actually do them at the same time, but you just want to frame around. So I thought, okay, we'll go with magnolia, and we'll have it like a tree branch. So I'll just pull this back so you can see. It's like that. So, yeah, we wanted, because this being wood, like a branch, we wanted to be more branchy. So we, you just play around with it, and whatever you do on this side, you make sure you do on the other side. So you follow through, you get here, and then, you'll see when I go back, that's kind of in the way. So that distance, they don't have to be the same, but you just have to fill your way across and think of like a nice bridging arch. And you just use whatever pieces you can put together to make a pattern that sort of will take you there. And of course, like I said, down the bottom, you have a gap between the two. So you have to work out how to fill the gap, and that's why you have the butterflies there. It was more or less the same thing here and down there. So start on the sides and just find a way to fill the middle. Find a way to fill that gap. And try to make it look like it was meant to be. So I just pop that back. So that's it. And so you get to the edge here, and you want to frame the door. So you work out a pattern to get up there. And then once you have that, you start on that pattern and all the pieces are the same size. So as long as you orientate them to the roof and get the same spaces, same distance, it should get you to the same place. And you follow the same pattern down. You work your way across with the same pattern. And now Rokoko Couture will take you around a bend because it's plastic. You can snap it or you can just cut it. But that's it. And then you just go up just to get the same sort of idea here, same. So, you know, you come up with different motifs. You might go, that looks good. So you do it over on the other side as well. And you just think, okay, let's make a little branch, and you just pick pieces that look like they belong in a branch. So a bit of this one, a bit of that one, some leaves, some flowers, and a butterfly to top it off. So that was more or less how we did that wall. And we just had these doors. So once you had that middle part, you just had to take it down this way and go down, following the same pattern, and go across until you reach the other side. And now you can see that's kind of close to being symmetrical, but it probably isn't. But you want it to feel symmetrical. So whatever the middle section is, you want that to line up with the middle of your furniture. So you design that around your furniture to make sure that they're aligned in the middle. But you can see I couldn't follow that pattern all the way across because I had a picture here and there was this odd space here and you had the furniture there, but you just have to panel. So, you know, leave it there. So come down here, go across. You're not going to be able to finish it like that, but you don't need to because there's not a door on the other side so much. But you just have to kind of like work it out. Same as here, like that one had a square, so we could go on square, but here we couldn't finish the square. We ran into a mirror. So you start at the top and you Rokoko Couture, just follow the line, pick parts that look like they go together. And a good way to do it is just mirror. So like you're looking at a reflection. That always seems to work. So you go down, just mirroring it, follow the line. Make sure you've got like a bit of a keystone up the top. Make sure you've got like a bit of a footer stone. And you basically want to join it together like that. And then you've got this picture here. Now this panel here, so you've still got the same thing going from the door and running into that panel, and you've still got the same thing going from the door running into the panel. So you want to take care of these first, the pictures. So I did do this one first, and I just copied it across to the other ones and integrated it with what was happening on those walls. So I picked a keystone, I went either side of it, and I just wanted to get either side of the picture. So I just worked my way across. When I got to the end, I thought, okay, we got to go down now. And then you just work, you know, try to find a nice little pattern to get you down there. And then whatever, you know, once you pass the center point, you just want to copy what you did earlier. Again, trying to mirror reflect it, but have a little bit of differences just to keep it fresh. So people don't notice that's all you're doing is mirroring across. And you just, you get down, you do the sides, and then you work your way down the bottom. And, you know, it should fit. Like, if you do your measurements correctly and you get them pretty much to the millimeter, you'll fit. You might have like a little bit of discrepancies. Let me see if how well I did this. See there, that met into there. That's like whereas over here it didn't quite. But you know, that centimeter gap, no problem. As long as that middle cornerstone is in the middle, it should come out all right. That was the first one I did. As you can see, by the time I did it a couple more times, it was a lot better. Sure, like see how this has got no gap here and over there it's got more gap. So you would fill this in with a bit of a sign later on, just to make it feel that that's not a mistake, which it kind of is, to be honest, but you just have to add to it to make it work. So back over here, I saw I could chuck one of those panels around this one. And so that's what I did. And then I just joined it to the mirror. So I was like, yeah, that will get me there, and this will get me here. And it can be on any angle sometimes. It's just to give it flow, to give it connecting. But there, so there's two panels in the mirror and you just want to connect them up. Yeah. So same thing here, I did the middle panel. I had a little bit of a new arrangement for this one. Same as the other one, like the cherry blossom one. But then down here, I did it a little bit differently. And whatever I did on this side, I did it on this side. If you run into a power point or a light switch, you can always just cut it. Just take out your Stanley knife and cut it, and that still works. And you just, same thing with the door. I followed the same pattern I did over here. And you just end up wherever you end up. And as long as it joins, it looks absolutely deliberate and it'll work. So I got to the end here. I ran the same pattern down this door frame. Oh, it's kind of a door frame, but you do it on both sides. So I can zoom out like this, that's better. So you run it down both sides, you follow the same pattern down the ground and finish it at the door. And then here, you know, we had the boxes around those pictures here, 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 and you try to do a similar thing. Here you start it off and you just fill in the gap, make it join. Find something that would join. And then, you know, had that same sort of motif there with the magnolia coming up, and here was the same pattern that we had reoccurring over here. So you want to kind of create these motifs and reuse them. But you basically decorate around the center focal points first, because they'll be in the center of the room. Center of the wall. They should, like, that's where you generally hang paintings. Decorate around them and then join them up with your patterns. And then this one here, I had this and it looked very bold and very lone. So I just ran a sequence across there, a sequence across the top. I wouldn't say that's finished, but it's getting there. And then I carried that along the rest of the stairwell, just on this side here. And again, I had a picture here. I had a pediment above it. That's a pediment I used above the windows too. And I just picked a different sequence. This one's, again, a different sequence to what we had around the door. And you can just, it's basically, you just want to go straight down, both sides, keeping it even, and join it up in the middle. I had this shelf, so I kind of got to there, and then I had to try to work out how to join them. And it's just picking pieces that would make the distance. This panel is just the same panel as what we started with over there, and that gives it a reoccurring theme. We just want to keep going those panels. This was a wider wall, so I couldn't really do a panel with two smaller ones, or two panels probably wouldn't look right, because you want it to be the same width as the panel above it. So I had to create a new panel for that one. And even behind the furniture, same thing. You move the furniture and you continue the panel. But that's the panel that was over here as well. And you pretty much, you finish the panel. So basically, you want to give it a bit more shape, make it feel more rococo instead of a straight line. You pick a sort of a head keystone and you just give it a bit of shape, and you just copy the same thing. Go as far as you want to go, which is basically is depending on the panel at the top. Or if you did the panel on the bottom first, the panel at the top has to be the same width. But in this case, I had the width for the top, so I should just match it at the bottom. And then I chucked this one in the middle, because I felt that there was this unnecessary gap. Like, I've got a gap down the bottom, I've got a gap up the top. I shouldn't have too much gap in the middle. It can look a bit bare, but sometimes that's what you want. But you can see that's how it is without the gap. Because I have these ornaments in the middle, you don't really, like, having that there might be too much. So I wanted a bit more space, but over here and over here, I thought let's do that a little bit differently. And I can carry on the pattern there, keeping these all the way to connect these two areas. So over here, I made this new panel, as I was saying, and I joined it up to where I left off there. And it was basically pretty straightforward. So see, there was a bit of a gap there. That's because this is a piece that was added on to join it. So you can see I couldn't go straight up. This was a panel like that with this piece here. And I just kind of like connected this part the same way I did that part over there, which got back to the same way we did it over there. And that's, you just have to be creative in how you do that, but we'll put these up for sale, and you could make that longer just by adding another alliteration if you've got a taller ceiling, or if you wanted to make it taller, you just add another sequence just to give it that width or that height. So that's basically how we did this wall and these walls and this wall. And over here, I felt we're moving away from the main room, so we wanted to play it down a little bit. So we went a little bit more simple. We just did the bottom panels. Maybe I've got to do like a magnolia out here. Still thinking about it. You don't rush these things. You work out what's the best way to do it. That was the same pattern we used over there off the door, and then it went to the same sequence and then went back into the door. And it only went one way this way because I couldn't really go this way. I already had a panel. That's the same panel we did over there. And by, you've got the same artwork size, you do the same panel. And that ties it in both sides of the room. And around here, we've got that repeating pattern here. And under here, I thought of a new pattern. Couldn't use the same one, obviously, that wouldn't work. So you just make a new one. And that comes out really well. As long as both sides are symmetrical or pretty close to it, it'll look good. So on this side here, I followed the same pattern I did there because I had the same cobble. I just did it in the opposite way. And I joined it up to this panel. So this was basically the same panel as the other two panels, the cherry blossom and the magnolia, but this is with rose. So I used rose ones and I got the same butterflies to match the butterflies over here. I just kept them gold. Because those other two panels were gold. Blue wouldn't look right. And then, yeah, that's basically it. Now, you've got a bigger space here than what you've got on the other side of them, but because it's so far away, it's the least of your worries. But if you did want that across, that would be a problem because this is the same panel here. You could make this panel bigger, but it wouldn't then be the same recurring panel, which might give you problems. Sometimes, like say in a kitchen, you don't have any space which you can Rococo couture much. But if you do get a bit of a space, like you can make a new pattern because it's a new room. And this isn't finished. I need another corbel here. I need to join it up and see how that looks. Maybe it needs more detail, but you work that out as you go. You see how it goes. And then another pediment above the window just to tie it in with the doors in the same area. So that is basically how I did this more informal look. And then, we have to discuss what we would do with the ceiling, and you think about it and you what direction you want to take it. If you want to leave it like that and go, okay, that's as far as we want to take it, or do we want to go a little bit more risky and a bit more colorful? So I'll talk about this final print in a minute, but I'll just go over here first and talk about this room. So you do the easier ones first, and then you leave the bigger rooms, the more serious rooms for later, because you got to up your skill a bit. Now, the central point in this room was the bigger artwork, the window, and this wall, which was a main wall. So you want to really do that one very, very last. But let's go around the window first. That was easiest. If you looked at the earlier video I did about the background, I talked about the Athena Garden, how they framed the window as the window is the central point. And this room has a few windows. So I thought, okay, let's make a pattern around that. So actually I started off with this panel here. And I didn't want an informal look like we had over there. I wanted something more formal, more bold, a bit more Spanishy French, maybe something like that, like a different, but more formal feel. So I actually started with a keystone. I worked out how far, that's about 50 centimeters. And how I worked that out was this was about a 3 meter window. And in classical order, we make window, not frames, window surrounds, 1/6 of the window. So 50 centimeters is a sixth. So I work, you play on the table, you sit on the table, you just put some pieces together and you go, oh, that looks good. That's about 50 centimeters. And then you whack it up. So if it's 50 centimeters, you do want a bit of a gap here. So I moved 30 centimeters out and made that the central point. I also had this picture here, and this was 60 centimeters, so that worked really well. And you can always move the picture if it's not right. But because I've got another window over there, you've got to make sure that you have enough space to do that panel twice. Even though that window isn't 3 meters long, you're continuing the pattern from the main focal point window. So you want to make sure that you can run that pattern all the way across around the whole room. That's pretty important. If you can't run around the whole room, have a really good think about it, because you're not going to get this off. So make sure it's right. Maybe it's a 40 centimeter panel is what you get, and just run with 40. But make sure you can do the panel all the way around. So I did that, and then I thought, okay, let's do a center one. So this is what comes next. I did that. To give you an idea what that looks like, it's like that with that. And you go, well, I have to join them up. And in the Athena garden, the basic shape was top part, down the sides, some sort of like curve like that, back down, bottom part. The panels were basically like that. If you go back to the first video, that's what you'll see. I might be able to pull it up on the computer just so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so the Athena garden, which was a bit of a working example. Yeah, you can see the panels, make it bigger. Is it better? Yep, that's a bit better. Okay, so top part, down, oopsie. Okay, so you've got a bit of a top part and down here. And then we did the other side, and then we joined them from both sides into the middle. So what I did when we did this window was I actually put the pediments up first, because I could sort of go middle point, middle pediment, middle point, pediment, pediment. So I just had the 3 pediments at the top, and I had this. So I did one of these on this side, and I made another panel for the bottom, which looks like that, just to bring it down to the ground. So I did this side, I did this side, and then I started joining them up. So, you basically have this part here, and you want to go up. Work out how far down you want from the cornices. If you want to change those cornices, you will need a bit of space for the workers to remove that cornice and put a new one. Oh, it's not like that. Okay. So, yeah, so you want to just find a way to go across and then fill in the space. So then, you start working around this shape to fill in the space to make the pattern. And then you want to mirror the pattern on this way, because it's got the same space. So you're doing that on both sides, and then you've got the middle part. And you go, well, I could go all the way across, but then that would look kind of boring. So let's finish it here. So 3 lengths, finish it, 3 lengths, finish it. And then now we want to fill in the space in the middle. And you just continue that pattern following this. As long as you do both sides the same, you'll have a nice crown in the middle. So that's how we did it. And then once you have this, you think, oh, well, I've got to go that way. So that joint up there, you do the same here, you do the same here, and you follow it across. And that's the same pattern. Even though we don't have the pediment here to go around, we just keep the same pattern because we want to just keep that same pattern going. And then you get to the end here and you measure 30 centimeters out here and you drop another one of these down the bottom. These are wood, and we'll talk about them on another video. But basically you just measure from there to there. Let me see, like here. And this is, you'll see this in the video. So you measure from here to here, cut a piece of wood, shave off the two ends, stick it in there. But we just do that here, and you'll just have to kind of cut it around the piece and stick it in the gap and make sure that they're straight and with even spacing, and that's how you do it. So we follow the pattern around, another pediment, followed around, other side 30 centimeters from the window frame. Here we go, drop another one of those all the way down, hasn't finished yet, cap it off and just continue the pattern around, both ways, all around the room. Now we got onto this wall here. We copied 30 centimeters off, we dropped another one. We did that on the other side, 30 centimeters off, dropped another one. And then we followed the pattern around and we thought, okay, let's reference Roman Corinthian columns, and we got a bit of a pilaster capital. Just to be unique, have a bit of a feature in the feature room. So we dropped one of them either side of the big picture, and then we wanted to work down and we wanted to frame it there. So we worked down here, copying both sides, dropped another pilaster at the end of that, and then you continue this pattern across and see where it connects. And it connects there. So whatever you do on this side, you want to do on the other side. Keeping it symmetrical. And that's basically what we did. So we had this first, we worked our way across and we hit the pilaster. We worked our way across, hit the pilaster, capital. And then we just made a new design, start from both ends, work your way to the middle, find a way to close whatever gap you have in the middle. You'll have to make a new design to fix that. But you do want to pick similar pieces to what you were using on the sides. So if you had these pieces, which I did, I wanted to reverse it on this side, make a new central component that would fill in that gap. So you're always filling in the centers, the last thing you do. You start from the sides and then you both work either side to the middle, and then you find a way to fill the middle. And then the middle, the top is the same as the middle and the bottom, so the sequence is exactly the same. And that's how you frame the wall. And then, so you might drop another one of these here, and I will. I'll put one there, I'll put one there, and then we'll need another panel we'll have to create in the middle. So we've got a whole layer, a whole level of paneling down the bottom. And that is basically where we're at. And then now we're into the entrance. We're doing the same thing. The entrance wall, being a little bit special, has its own different panel. We created this part first. You just play around, work out how much space you have, work out how wide you want the panel to fit in that space, drop your center piece, which was actually at TS1 again, that one there, and then you work a pattern around it, just making, you know, this go this way, copy, and drop some flowers in there, a bit of a traditional sort of touch. Come down. This is the next thing you do. So you have that up the top, you have this down the bottom, you put this one in. So you've got 1, 2, and then you work out the middle. You stick the middle in, and now you want to come down and join it somehow to the middle. So the middle's the last thing you do, but sometimes you need a marker because you need to join it there. So start at the top, copy it down the bottom, pop in a middle point, which is this piece here, that piece there, and then work your way down each side to join in the middle. And same thing here. And you can see there's a gap there, but because I had this, you know, kind of just filled in the gap. And we've got the Rococo Couture, Le Petit Prince Salon sign down the bottom. Same thing at the top. work out a way you want to come off those, pick a piece that would do it for you, and then come across with to do something in the middle. That's basically the plan. And you'll see here that I'm starting to go across like that. And so the next thing would be to make one of those at the top, work our way across. Unfortunately, we don't have a wall here, so it's going to come over to here. But this is not wide enough to accommodate one of those panels. So this window, hold on, get back a bit. This window is going to have to be a completely different surround. Completely different. It's just a different space. Now we do have the surrounding space around the doorway, the main doorway, isn't quite wide enough to accommodate that panel too. So that could be the same surround as that window. So that's something we'll have to design. We'll also have to see how far we can take this pattern over here. And I think we can do another one. So it's like 1, 2, 3. It would just be around these 45-degree angles like that. Not the most fun. Leave that one to last when you've leveled up your skill a little bit more. Then, so if we do a surround here, we are sort of going into here and we'll have to do something here. So we need to get some fresh ideas for that. And then we have to look at the corners. Are we going to keep it white? Are we going to Rococo Couture around it? Are we going to take out the 90mm cove that everyone has and stick something more customized from some local supplier? Those are, then when we do that, are we going to do something to the ceiling? How much of the ceiling we're going to do? So to answer those questions, what I like to do is go onto Google, type in Rococo rooms, Rococo French rooms, famous Rococo French rooms, and look at some of the other rooms. And I like to print them out because they're going to give us ideas of how we can finish our room. So you get some ones you think, oh, that looks good. I could maybe learn something from that, and you print them all out and you can lay them out. And then you take a pen and then you, I also like to take photos of my rooms here because I'm going to try to find similarities in the spaces and then doodle those patterns onto these windows. So that's a window there. We're looking at what surround would do that. You got this other main wall, which we don't know what to do with yet. You got the door frame here. That's going to be similar to this in terms of space to work with, and they're very much in the same line of sight, so they might want to be the same pattern. So, and then you have this space here, and you have this massive ceiling here, which we could leave white, or we could do something with. The question is how much we would want to do. So sometimes I like to look at other pictures and you know what's right and what's going to work and what isn't. So in here, you've got your gold panels on the walls. We're on with that. Now you've got a white cove. So that's why I thought this was interesting. We might print this one out. So we might just leave that, save ourselves a lot of money, and then work with some white Rococo Couture. Bit on the ceiling, keep a central feature, which we have. That being the central feature. But we could always do some white plaster Rococo Couture with a little bit of gold just to tie it in. Little gold accents on it. And just basically go around the outer edge with that. That's something we can do. Or here you can see they've got a white cove more or less with some Rococo Couture pattern, a straight line, and keeping a white ceiling. This is interesting, like a little jagged pattern. We could do something like that. We could be very, like, what do you call it? Formally repetitive, or we can be more organic. But I guess in the formal area, you want to be more formal, repetitive. Maybe on the more informal side, we might be a little bit more organic. And then you have this sort of boudoir or something else. This sort of like wood carving thing. We could do something like that with Rococo Couture. the Princess Salon in the Hotel de Sorbus in Paris has a similar thing. So sometimes you can get some close-up shots like that. Looks like a nice round ceiling rose. And we just got to pull out a pattern, maybe with a dart in the middle, and just kind of like sprinkles out. And this whole bunch of little flowers, we could do something like that. And that's how it is. So they've got that in the middle, and they've got it kind of going across into their entablature, which we've kind of have our own entablature. And it's nice to have the white plaster sitting on top of the gold plaster. Like that seems to work really well if that's something we can do in the future. We might keep open to that. That's similar to what we have there, and they've just got it with a heavy gold frame. But again, with the white plaster and gold plaster, with little gold accents, sometimes that might be the way we do it. We've got narrower walls, and see how that's kind of similar. And like, see, this is a nice kind of pattern. We could look at something like that. That you basically just want to do it for ideas. This could also work too. Like, so have a box patterns, and then some sort of drawing or painting inside. Maybe that's too much for what we have here, a little bit too sophisticated. But maybe around the front entrance, some like more special, like on a higher level than the rest of the place, that could work. And then there's also this. I'm quite inspired by this. This is on another level again. But having a pattern of these different pictures and then joining them up, you could Rococo couture that in your own way. But it's still very geometric, so that's quite challenging. But I imagine something like that could work in the sort of stair area as well. So let's talk about this for a minute. This is a vinyl print. The printer can print 1.2 meters wide, but as long as you want. But you generally, 1.2 meters is it. So what I've got here, I might have turned this light off so you can see the print, is from Versailles in the Hercules room. And that's the ceiling print. So this is 1.2 meters by 1.2 meters, and you just got to cut out the edges, make it circle. And then you put a plaster ring over it. So I did see in some of the examples, they might have a smaller one here in the corners. If that's something we want to do, join it up and then do a little flower thing over to here. I mean, they're just all ideas. You just play around with it. But we have this, and we can, like, you can just pick different ones, get them from Shutterstock, bring them to a printer, print them out. AJ Wallpaper in Melbourne, he does them great. Just ask for the old vinyl, not the textured vinyl, the smooth vinyl. The smooth vinyl will get the picture looking right. So whether you want to throw this up on the ceiling and just have a bold frame around it, if that's right for the room. I did something like that over here, 1.2 meters by 1.2 meters. See? You can do that. And initially that's what I printed this one out for. But I'm sort of thinking maybe I can decorate the stairs and basically cut sort of around these different sort of islands of angelic kind of heavenly beings. Sort of like that. And use them here and here and here and here, and then join them up and frame them all in Rococo Couture. It's good to have these sort of creative ideas, something similar to how he has it here, but probably a little bit less, more organic like here, where you cut out like islands of it, and they don't have to be the same. You're just cutting out the picture and then Rococo Couture around them and to join them up. So thinking that could be an approach for the stair area. You can always do, yeah, like, you know, we might cut like circles, for instance, or I mean, not exactly circles, but some sort of circular shape. And do that and Rococo couture around it. In the ceilings, because it's a bit of it's a ceiling mural. We could do that, and we could maybe do corners here. It really depends how much risk you want to take. But like we saw, we could keep the white cornice. We could do white plaster on the white cornice, paint that white, and then hold that sort of gold trim around, which look more elevated. Probably you got to find a right balance. You don't want to, you still want it to feel safe and predictable, but you still want to be bold and fresh and innovative. So, and that's a pattern we could take everywhere. So, I mean, that's highly likely that we will treat this cornice that way. And then it's a question of, do we have flowers coming into these sort of chandelier areas? Do we want to make this sort of pattern around the chandeliers? I think that would be really nice, whether we have it in gold or we have it with white with the gold. And sometimes you can look at examples and you know how it would turn out. If you did all gold, that's what you'd get. And whether you want to join them up or you just want to keep it like an island. But I think this is something we could take on board. Maybe even a gold on the cornices. As long as you frame it, it seems, as long as we frame with some straight parts, do a repetitive pattern in the middle on the cove, that might work. And that's something we just have to experiment with, but it seems like that's what a lot of people have done, and it seems to work. Even white Rococo couture on the ceiling, that seems to work. So I would have thought that if they did gold here and white there, that would be better, because they do have some gilded features. So it's good to look at these images and just say, look, I think if they did this, it would have turned out better. Yeah, I mean, we could also have whole walls. If we wanted to look at this wall here and then just frame it up, do something like this right there, that's possible too. That would play into that more nautical travel theme, having smaller pictures here and then Rococo couture around those pictures, and then connect that to another frame that Rococo couture around this frame here, and then have another round thing on the bottom. So you can look at your walls and then look at what other people have done and get ideas. Like, see, this is a nice little pilaster kind of thing they've got going on here, framing the side. We might do that, and that would work very well for the wall that was opposite it. Even in the entrance, we could, you know, maybe pilasters a way to go. Maybe we do the pilasters around there and around here. So yeah, it's great to print things out and then have ideas and see if they would fit. And if you're happy with them, like, here's another thing I wanted to do. I have this to join these two areas up. We could, you know, do what that guy's done and have this sort of repeating pattern just all the way across here and all the way across here on both sides. And then, of course, you've got the cove. We could do another pattern there and then another gold pattern on top of that. And just carry that all around the room. So you can see at the moment, it just looks a little bit understated, a little bit too plain, but having a little gold trim either side of there, maybe something on the bottom again. You know, it's good to try to think of how we can dress it up. Like, this is not a wide, that's probably like 10 centimeters wide. Maybe we could run a series of these, and maybe that would fit. If it doesn't, I mean, you can always just think of new examples. Maybe we want something more curvy to make it more interesting. Or maybe we just don't do that part and we just do the sides. We could do the same thing there with these sort of like flower medallions, just evenly space them across. That might work really well. But yeah, I think that, you know, that gives you a bit of a method. Take a photo of your wall, print out some inspiring images that you may want to appropriate, and then try to work out solutions. And I'm always here to help you if you want to talk about them, or if you show me a picture of your walls, you know, we might be able to come up with some suggestions and pick the right Rococo Couture pieces to put in place to make that work. And hopefully in the coming videos over time, you'll get to see how I've actually gone about and filled in these spaces with Rococo Couture, and we'll see how we go. Thank you for your time again, and hope we'll be Rococo Couturing together in the future. All right, have a good night.